May 2024, a very anticipated month. Again, one of these months that astrologers have had on their 2024 cards as the best month of the year. I'm sure many astrologers you're watching on other channels are going to say best astrology of the year. I'm still with January. I think January was maybe better, but this is certainly going to be an awesome month of astrology, and it comes at the right time, doesn't it? It comes after we've had some wild eclipse turnabouts, both in our personal lives and in the outer world. So lock in, we're gonna just run through fast some of the main themes of May 2024, some of the key dates, and some of the things that I'm seeing and that I wanna share with you to help you better prepare for this month of May 2024, the month of Taurus, but also this shift into Gemini, which is a key shift for this year. This is kind of a fulcrum point or a pivot point for all of the year. Stay tuned. So these are some of the most Taurian times we've had in many years. What is Taurus? It's fixed earth, which means that we're settled into the energy of a season. That's one way to look at the signs of the zodiac. In the Northern Hemisphere, we're fixed into spring right now. So that's one main theme of this month, enjoying the spring, the warmth, the new energy that you've got going, the ability to be outdoors like I am now, the freshness of life, the flowers that are blooming, all of that spring energy. May 2024 and the Taurus season always captures that. The other thing is that this is the climax of the peak of a cycle for Jupiter. And I want to say this now in this video, Jupiter is one of the most underrated planets in all of astrology is my belief. I think Jupiter got lost when astrologers discovered the outer planets Uranus and Neptune, and then the dwarf planets Pluto and other dwarf planets and Chiron and the centaurs. Jupiter got lost in all of that mix, and it shouldn't have been, because for my money, Jupiter is the most powerful predictive planet, or one of the most. Saturn and Jupiter are basically it, in my view, in terms of shifts of energy and tonality. I watched Jupiter change signs all through the last few years, and it really changed the tone of the whole world in terms of what the world was processing. And I see it all the times in readings. Jupiter changes signs, enters a new whole sign house, and people's lives really shift. And the house topics that Jupiter then begins to accentuate and reveal and expand really become prominent in people's lives. And so in May 2024, when you have Jupiter changing signs on the 25th of May, UTC, and entering Gemini, it's going to be a big pivot for all of our stories in some major ways. So keep that in mind as we talk about May 2024. In my sense, it's the most important thing. Any year, when does Jupiter change signs? And we get that this month. With Taurus, I think the key component is simply Moon-Venus combinations. Moon is the body, the home space, and Venus is comfort and pleasure. So you're combining comforts and pleasures in the home when you talk about Taurus. The one thing I've been thinking about, I think, with people is that because we have a benefic pile up in Taurus, both Jupiter and Venus are there with the luminaries, and then Mercury joins mid-month, is being open to what feels good, letting ourselves be open to a little bit of good things happening and pleasure and enjoyment. This is something that can be tough for people, especially when life throttles you, like maybe has happened during eclipse season, and in the outer world, war, all kinds of stuff is blowing up. We have to sort of always remain open for pleasure to envelop us and for joy to exist. Jupiter and Venus are planets of joy and hope for the future. They're all of the good things, or many of the good things in life are signified by Jupiter and Venus. And this month we get Venus in Taurus, its domicile, joining Jupiter in that final act of Jupiter and Taurus with these luminaries and with Mercury. So hold out for goodness and for good things and for feeling satisfied and contented and loved, feeling inspired and feeling creative, all of the Taurian stuff, feeling beautiful, sharing your beauty with people around you and with the world around you. This is a major theme and a major impetus and a high suggestion from me to everybody out there. Be open to good joy, be open to pleasure and positivity here in May 2024, and especially in that Taurus sector of your chart. You know your houses, where Taurus is, your whole sign house of Taurus, that's where you can have some really lovely events here in May 2024. Let's just run through the dates here relevant to this first theme, this first Taurian theme. 8 May is the new moon in Taurus. It's the birth of the new as the luminaries mix with both benefic planets to celebrate spring. There's no malefic harm in this chart. Saturn is sextile the luminaries and the benefics. Mars is averse with Mercury and Aries. You have, on the 15th of May, Mercury entering Taurus, and so Mercury follows that new moon and comes to the Taurus sector. Mercury now directs, allowing us to notate and describe and communicate and understand and process the information of pleasure, the new pleasures we may be enjoying all month. I think Mercury gives us a sense of being able to connect with others and share about those pleasures and joys. Mercury entering again on 15 May. Think about things, just quickly to go back to these themes. There's like the Epicurean philosophies of pleasure being a virtue. I think if there was ever a month to embrace things like feeling good and the refined enjoyments of life, it's this month. And whole philosophies have been built around centering that as a virtue, meaning we don't need shame as we embrace what feels good. We can let the shame go and sort of celebrate. Sometimes that's just one way to look at life. We wake up, we're always seeking comfort constantly. We get out of bed, we have to shower, eat food. Life is sort of about satisfying and sating our needs and adjusting to diminish discomfort. And that's okay. Let's do that this month. You might think about Gatsby and parties, that book, The Great Gatsby, one of my favorite novels. And they're very much celebrating existence through inviting friends to parties. That's what Gatsby did. So maybe you'll have a party or throw a party or get into nature or be around people that you want to celebrate life with. All great things to do this month. And remember, this is the final moments of Jupiter in Taurus. Anytime Jupiter or Saturn is changing signs, or really any planet, there can be parting gifts. There can be a sense of Jupiter working through Taurus for a year, May 2023 to May 2024, and now we get to complete that task and celebrate the revelations and the justice and the truth that Jupiter has injected in our Taurus sector. And so keep that in mind, be open to these kind of epiphanies of joy that could emerge here with Jupiter's final moments in Taurus. And a few more dates about this. That's this final week of Jupiter in Taurus. It starts on the 18th of May with the Sun conjoining Jupiter, that cazimi of Jupiter, a purified injection of the Jupiterian Taurian, the revelations about the true nature of pleasure, giving ourselves permission to fully feel happy. These are kind of delineations you might settle into. Venus conjoins Jupiter on the 23rd of May. This might be like the final dessert. You've had a luscious meal and you get that final sweet dessert the chef brings as a gift or something like this. And then that full moon in Sagittarius on the 23rd of May. All of those rulers of the moon flow back into Taurus, where the benefics still are settled in Taurus. And so both of the syzygies, the new moon and full moon this month, have rulers flowing back into Taurus, and both benefics in Taurus. It's really a benefic celebration, even when you examine the new and full moons here in May 2024. So the second major theme of the month, in my estimation, is the sextile to Saturn. Planets pinging Saturn in Pisces. We're back to this major story of 2024, and we're finishing it out this month, which is that Saturn in Pisces sextiles many planets in Taurus, and you get this fusion and combination of support between Pisces and Taurus. Okay, and so I want to explore that a little bit. Remember, we've had the Jupiter-Saturn sextile. It perfected last year, but got really close earlier this year, and then now it's been separating. By sign, that sextile ending in May, it is the finale for this aspect as well. And so what has it been? It's been a flow of creative support. Pisces ruled by Venus by exaltation, Taurus ruled by Venus by domicile. It's a Venusian envelopment of our two great planets, Saturn and Jupiter. And so it's been a wildly creative time, I think. I know I felt it. I've had a lot of creative work that I've gotten to do during this period. You might have been feeling it too. You might have been able to flow with more tangible creativity, that's the Taurian, and then more dreamy, imaginative, surreal creativity, experimental creativity, avant-garde creativity, that's the Piscean. And that flow comes to an end here in May, but it still exists for this month in a strong dose because we have these three pings. So the Sun will perfect a sextile to Saturn, the Sun from Taurus, Saturn and Pisces on 7 May, just before that new moon. Venus will perfect its sextile to Saturn, Venus from Taurus, on the 13th of May, right after that new moon. And then Mercury will perfect the sextile to Saturn on 28 May, just as Mercury is leaving the sign. So really all month, we get this triggering of the Taurian and Piscean narratives. And this I just want to come back to. I mean, there's a certain thing in the psychedelic world, something called set and setting. And so when you take a psychedelic drug, and I'm not advocating that, I'm offering it as more an analogy or an example here, but they talk about set and setting. Setting is the physical space around you. There is this idea that when you blow the mind with the psychedelic journey, that would be Saturn and Pisces. You need to have a stable setting around you that allows for the explorations and the psychedelic explorations. And that's the Taurus Pisces sextile. We have a stable setting so that we can go deeper in these dreamy, sort of surreal explorations that sometimes can be intense, right? Going into the abyss of reality and not really knowing what's real or what is false. When you have a stable ground from which to explore those things, it's very much a feeling or a notion of support. And that's that sextile that we get to finish out here in May 2024. Another analogy I like is that there's like a spiritual pilgrimage with Saturn and Pisces where you're going out to seek some kind of truth with no end. You might not even have an end to this pilgrimage. You're just going to keep walking until God taps you on the shoulder. The Taurian support is the sustenance that such a spiritual seeker will have on the journey. You know, maybe that spiritual seeker launches with nothing in his pocket, and then the journey sort of takes care of him or her or them because of this Taurian sustenance that can flow vis-a-vis the sextile aspect. So these are some analogies, some things to think about as you get into this month, and we trigger, activate, and utilize the flow of this sextile between Taurus and Pisces that finishes out. Jupiter leaves, it's gone. June, this summer, we get that square with Saturn and Jupiter, and it's a lot more chaotic energy. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. We've got this song I grew up singing, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream. We can sing about the fact that reality is tenuous and uncertain, and we don't even know what it really is, frankly. It's like waking up in the dream, you wake up in that dream, you wake up in that dream, forever. Never-ending holes of the unknown. It's kind of scary, you know. I mean, the Bible has this idea you see God and you would die because the truth of God is so profoundly intense. But we can sing and we can celebrate in spite of these strange, kind of terrifying things. And that is why I love that song. We grew up singing it. Life's a dream, but I'm going to sing anyway. And be happy. Be merry and be happy. So the next thing that's, in my view, the theme of the month, the third one, and I'm going to do 4 in this video, but the third, is that the eclipse season effects, I think, may be really hitting harder here in May in a certain way. I don't think it'll be quite as intensely eclipsy, as we say, because the eclipses are over. We're out from beyond these eclipses, but we have, remember, during eclipse season, Mercury was retrograde. That hinders mental processing of the events that are going down. 1, and then 2, the domicile ruler of the eclipse, Mars, this Aries solar eclipse, is in Pisces, 12th from Aries. And what is the 12th house? It is the enemies, the obstacles, but it's a so-called dark house. It can be things that are hidden or hard to see. Pisces is a sign that's not well known for having a certain clear sense of what's happening. And so now that Mercury is direct in May, in Aries, now that Mars is in Aries all of May, I think there might be a sense of waking up to our eclipse stories and waking up to the events that have happened to us during the eclipses and having a much clearer sense of, you know, what went down in April, frankly. I know for me, I was like, what is even happening? It was kind of very much a confusing, discombobulating period. You know, I ascribe that to Mercury retrograde and Mars in Pisces with Saturn. And so the specific transits are Mercury will conjoin Chiron on the 7th of May, right before that new moon, and 21 degrees of Aries. Mars will conjoin the North Node, 14 degrees of Aries on 20 May. And then Mars conjoins Chiron on 29 May, right at the end of May, in the 23rd degree or 22 degrees. And you can see here how Mars triggers the North Node in Chiron, Mercury hits Chiron, and so all of the wounds and the challenge and the eclipse intensities, those get a second, whoa, the eclipse intensities, those get a second trigger here, one that is with a forceful, powerful, domiciled Mars in a fire sign. And so yes, could this trigger up even more like wars? Certainly, a strong Mars can sometimes do that in the mundane sense. You really wonder how this Mars affects the mundane astrology with the wars happening in the Middle East and in Ukraine. But for our personal lives, I think we can wake up, know how to act, and know really what happened better than we have so far with this whole eclipse cycle and these eclipse stories. I'm gonna walk up here now. Dude, one of us is gonna fall into the river. And so remember, what are eclipses? We're now into this new reality. Eclipses are like a reset. It's like a programmer of a game comes in and says, initiate eclipse, and the eclipses arrive, and then the game is new for 6 months. We have new energies that have been triggered, new fate has been activated. So we're now in this next 6 months of our reality after that solar eclipse in Aries, after that lunar eclipse in Libra. And so you have a powerful Mars, planet of action, in the fire sign Aries, planet of new action. That's a big theme this month too, is getting our feet under us and getting into some of that new action. Domiciled Venus and Taurus, domiciled Mars and Aries, really, really good for all of the Venus and Mars sectors of our charts. You know, don't sleep on, even though the eclipse points are being triggered, you might be ready to maneuver and go into reality in ways you've never felt as strongly or as clear about up until this time in 2024. So very exciting time, especially Northern Hemisphere. We're coming into that spring expansion and those summer expansions. You know, one thing I was thinking about is this Japanese art called the kintsugi, which is the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. And so if the eclipses kind of broke us up a little bit here, we may be piecing things back together and building some real beautiful objects. Mars is a planet of making and doing. Mercury is the planet of detail orientation. They're there blending together in Aries, the sign of that solar eclipse, for much of May until Mercury leaves on the 15th. And the final thing of May 2024, in my view, the final big point, is the shift from Taurus into Gemini, the arrival of the Gemini reality, with Jupiter entering Gemini on 25 May. It's the biggest thing, the biggest story in my view, if I had to pick one story. And it's so fascinating because we have both benefics together in Taurus for the whole month until the end of May, when then both benefics are in Gemini. So it's almost like we get the sweetest Taurus moment within one of the sweetest Gemini moments we'll have for, you know, all of this next little period of a couple of years. Remember what happens to Gemini. Uranus enters Gemini in 2025, and Uranus will be there for 8 years. That is not an easy transit historically in terms of global warfare. And so we sort of front run Uranus and Gemini with Jupiter and Venus together in Gemini here at the end of May. And I think it's a time to soften, prepare, sweeten, and enjoy our Gemini sector before those shocks and upheavals come with Uranus in 2025 and then in 2026 for good. You can check out a podcast I did on Cam White's channel last month where we go into deeply the Uranus and Gemini, the Mars and Uranus together in Gemini stories and how that might impact us from a mundane sense. Some of you who are interested in that, check out Cam White's channel. What is Taurus? Taurus is a fixed earth sign. And what is Gemini? It's a mutable air sign. One is of the night, or so-called feminine, one is of the day, or so-called masculine. In aspect theory and astrology, when you have two signs next to each other, they're averse to each other, meaning they have no affinity. There's no affinity between Taurus and Gemini. They're of completely different natures. The planets that rule them, completely different planets. The qualities of the signs completely different. And that's why I think there may be a real jarring component to May, that by the time we get to those final weeks, we're in a completely different modality of being and a completely different way of operating. Combined with Jupiter now squaring Saturn instead of sextiling Saturn. And so it's a mutable square. Saturn and Pisces, Jupiter and Gemini, mutable signs are signs of change and chaos. They're so-called double-bodied signs where there's a lot happening. And so be prepared here in May to trigger and kick off this very chaotic and untethered and robust in terms of the quantity of things you may be grappling with on all levels. Taurus, the quietude of pleasures in the home, that shifts into the outer world chaotic Gemini, where you're just seeing thousands of things and having maybe a multitude of social contacts and social responsibilities. We go from the pleasures of the home, the Gatsby party, to the very dynamic stock market floor where prices are moving completely fast. You're having to process thousands of news stories. You don't even know what's real. A lot of fake news, a lot of games are being played, a lot of lies. That's Mercury, the ruler of Gemini. The dates that I want you to be aware of The sun will enter Gemini on the 20th of May. Venus enters Gemini 3 days later on the 23rd of May. And then 2 days later, Gemini welcomes Jupiter. And so again, we go from on the 19th of May, the sun, Venus, and Jupiter all in Taurus, till by the 26th of May, all three of them in Gemini. That's how compressed in time this major change happens here in May 2024. And just back again, I want to think about social media as an analogy. Before social media came, I was alive. I was late high school. Social media was just coming online in my early college years. And I've seen videos online about this recently. They'll have a picture and they'll say American high school in 1999 and 2000 and 2001. And it shows kids just hanging out in the halls and talking and jiving with each other, not a phone in sight. That was a slower pace of life. Information did not move as fast. You juxtapose that with where we are today, where almost everybody is embedded in these devices and it's just constant movement. It's a cacophony, everything all at once, of video and audio and moving parts, and now AI generated and AI edited images, where we really have no idea at some level, unless we deliberately kind of ground and sift through with discernment, another key word for Gemini, and Jupiter's truth. So it's like discerning truth is very much a theme for this next year. Remember, Jupiter's in Gemini. We have a whole period now where maybe we have to have revelations of information flow, justice around how to sift or discern through the information we're receiving. And much of this time, you have Saturn squaring by sign from Pisces, where it's like, what the hell is going on? I'm terrified of the fact I might not even exist, right? Some kind of Zen koan that's unanswerable. Emptiness is form, form is emptiness. And then we have all this information that's going 1,000 miles a minute. And I think we're really going to need many of these transits here over the next period. When we get good transits through signs that can ground us, we're going to need those very, very, very much. So listen, that's May. Enjoy May. Check in with yourself at the end of the month and say, okay, what happened from Taurus into Gemini, and what is beginning to take form in your Gemini sector and your Gemini whole sign house? That's kind of my major advice to you here in May. But enjoy it. Maybe the best month of the year, some of the sweetest, most pleasurable, most unifying astrology for relationships and fun and joy that we will have in a long, long time. And then we get set up for the tone that's going to last about a year with Jupiter and Gemini. So take care out there. Great to be with you, and have a wonderful, wonderful May 2024. Talk real soon. Okay, bye-bye.